a critical thinker, he's strategic, he writes, he's an eloquent man. Dr. Crichlow, come on up.
That was too much.
Do you need the mic?
I don't need the mic. Thank you very much, Sharon, and it's quite a pleasure to be here today, ladies and gentlemen, and a young kid back there. What I'd like to do is follow up with what Dr. Terry just presented. I'm really glad he went ahead of me and really laid the groundwork. So much of what he said fits into what I did. It's almost telepathic that we didn't even talk about what we were going to do together. But it makes quite a bit of a difference knowing that he led the way and I'm going to follow. Now, I'm going to start this by saying, if you look at these three people, the only thing that makes them similar is their ages. And the fact that each of them is probably going to be a billionaire. Well, she already is, he is, and she's getting close. Now, they're in their 30s, which is really, really young. I mean, I couldn't believe this. When I was 30, I was still trying to get it together. But the reason is, and the reason I put the slide up there is that this reminds me of Africa. You might say, well, all the hell does that remind me of Africa? Well, these kids did, and their kids, in less than 1 decade, starting from scratch, what people have tried to do in 200 years. Like Dr. Terry said, there's a leapfrog mentality, and these people have leapfrogged over everything that came before and got results. Ms. Cave, she's a mechanical engineer. She came up with a way to get rid of carbon dioxide in climate change to make the planet a little bit better. She's not yet a billionaire, but she's getting close. Elizabeth wrote her first patent at 19, and what she did, she invented a way to take a single drop of blood and run up to 200 tests on it for less than $30. She's going to put the medical laboratories out of business. She already did it. She's worth $5 billion. Mr. Gogo, I hope that's the way you pronounce his name, but it reminds me of Lady Gaga. Mr. Gogo, brilliant guy from Ghana. Elizabeth is from California, she's from Houston. This guy's from Ghana, and he came up with a technology, very, very simple, very elegant. He can detect counterfeit drugs in the pharmacy. What you do, when you buy the drug, you take a picture of a scratch-off label on it, hit the go button on your application, and it says in 6 seconds, it's bad or it's good. Imagine that. The reason is there's $7,500 billion worth of counterfeit drugs in the market right now, especially in Africa. So when you walk into a store and you pay, I don't know how much for your Viagra. One of them is for yourself. So you swipe it, take a picture, or type in the numbers, and all it says, bad. So you tell the guy, I'm sorry, I don't need it. Okay, what I'm trying to get at is that if these three individuals who began life just like the rest of us didn't know anything the day they were born, but they came to a point where within 15 years of their actual learning lives, because they didn't start learning until they were about 12 or 13, they can do this kind of stuff. It means that Africa doesn't have to go through 200 years of trying to go from the Industrial Revolution up to the electronic age. They can leapfrog completely over that system. Now, this is what I call ETSO. These individuals have education, training, skills, and opportunity. Now, a lot of places in Africa, the opportunity is not there, but it is coming, so it has to be something that we get into. Now, look at Africa today, 1.2 billion people, with a GDP ranging from $18,000 in Equatorial Guinea to $240 in Malawi. Malawi's got problems. It's landlocked, not too many people are educated. Guinea is not really that much better as far as the people, but they hit the jackpot. They've got a lot of oil. So that makes the difference. Life expectancy is between 50 and 60 years. What's noticeable in Africa is what I call the youth bulge. Everybody's young, which is good. When you're young, you can work all day, and party all night, and then go to work the next day. We all did it. So the youth bulge is a problem in some countries where there are many, what I call political problems. But in Africa, it's a blessing. What the economists and the bankers and the developers have told us is that growth alone is not sufficient. You need more jobs. Not only more jobs, you need better quality of jobs. And the quality has to be technical, professional, supervisory, and managerial. Those three young people on the first slide, they were in the technical area. So the challenges that are present in Africa focus on the people. And there's only one way to make it better is by improving the abilities and the resources that people have available. If you look at the end of this slide, 6% penetration in higher education is not sufficient. The average country has 26%, so there's quite a ways we've got to go in Africa to make this happen. Not only that, you have to look at trying to outrun the rest of the world. The population increase in sub-Saharan Africa is going to be 1.2 billion. US 100. Europe is going to lose 50 million people. They are getting older, they don't have as many kids. This is where the growth is going to be. And here's what the workforce looks like. Almost 1 billion new youngsters entering the workforce. 830 million. That's a lot of people in the next 40 years. That's 20 million a year, which on the earlier slide it says 18. But this has to be absorbed, and the only way to do it is by a structural transformation. You can't do it the way we did it. Go through the regular mechanism and hope to get there. Like Dr. Anderson said, you've got to use the tools that he analyzed, looked at, education-wise, and we've got to have the productive increases, after which you start following these increases with resources. Now, to do this, to do this, I like to postulate that emerging technologies can help us. Is that slide visible to you guys?
Yes.
You might want to close this window here. Yeah, do you need to do this? Please. No, just use the one on the right. Yes. Watch out for the coffee back there. Okay, the way I see this can be solved is with emerging technologies. And the fact is, emerging technologies are not a cure-all for everything, but it allows us to multiply our efforts almost exponentially, because as the Bible will tell you, you can't be every place all the time to do everything. So, emerging technologies allow us to look at education, healthcare, and medicine, retail systems, manufacturing systems. Internet is very, very valuable. Energy, which you'll hear from later, agriculture, and the physical infrastructure. Now, you might say, well, everybody does that. Well, everybody does it, but they do it differently. Especially in Africa, it has to be done differently. You've got to have partners to do this. You've got to have a perpetual and dynamic cycle. This has to be almost like a wheel rotating constantly. And hopefully none of these facets of the wheel are going to break off. None of the spokes are going to break and let you come crashing down. So business enterprises, the large conglomerates, the IBMs, the banks, governments, and the development agencies, higher education, and vocational are all put together. One way this is taking place is with what we call incubators or innovation centers in Africa, G and LTE. In Africa, the smartphone network is what we call legacy. It's a little stage back, it's 3G. So you've got to have a product that runs in 3G, if not, nobody's going to have it. In addition, you have these systems, cloud-based, international collaboration, and local support is critical. You've got to have infrastructure for technology, and you've got to have technology to build the infrastructure. If you try to go down the street and build a 4-lane freeway, you got to have people that know how to do algorithms that determine optimal distances and how much to cut and fill as you go through the mountains. You don't just send a bunch of guys in there to start cutting. It's called cut the mountain and then fill the ravine. So you cut and fill, and that takes a massive computer system, and it's something that you've got to have if you want to do it globally. And you can't sit back and wait for someone to come and say, "Here, Henry, take this." No, you have to get up and go get it. Because every Indian youth, every Chinese youth, every Latin American youth, every European guy in the Eastern Bloc is sitting at his computer right now trying to figure out how to make a buck. How they're doing it. Now the technology changes. The internet, the cloud, social media, smart devices, artificial intelligence, data analysis. This is called big data. Big data collects everything on everybody. I don't know how many of you have gone on Google or opened your email, and the very next time the browser opens, you see them trying to sell you something that was in your email. It's just mind-blowing. I was looking for a package to ship, a special kind of package 3 days ago. This morning I opened my email, and there was an advertisement on the right side of the browser for that package. I didn't tell anybody about it, but somebody's big data sucked off this data that Henry was looking at a 24 by 18 by 16 package, and it volunteers to sell me that. Well, that's the stuff we know about. There's stuff we don't even know about. So, big data is coming. Now, business platforms and low-tech solutions. You might say, what's a business platform? Well, I don't know how many of you know about Airbnb. How many know what's Airbnb? A couple, yeah, those guys, but Airbnb is a company started by this young kid in California who couldn't find a place to sleep one night. So he called his buddy and said, "You got a couch?" He said, "Yes, I've got a couch." He said, "Okay, come over." So he said, "Wait a minute, how many guys around you have couches?" And he said, "Well, we can call around. There were 4 or 5 guys who had couches that were available for his buddy when he came to visit." The guy said, "Wait a minute, there's a business here." So he started Airbnb. He got a computer program set up that says, "Henry, if you got an extra room and you want to rent it out on Friday night before the soccer game or the football game, put it online. You get $60. He's got, I think, 6 million rooms listed right now, and he drives around in his private jet. This is less than 4 years ago. Airbnb. I've got a friend in Norman who's doing this with his house, but I think the city of Norman is about to blow the boom on him because it's illegal in Norman. You can't rent your house for less than 30 days. So you've got to find a legal loophole to rent it for one night. And I think I know what you can do, but I didn't tell you yet. No, well, I won't tell you either. Keep it secret. It's something they have done in the oil and gas industry for 50 years. It's called an ABC deal. Okay, products marketplace like Amazon. Amazon is a big gorilla. But there are companies like Etsy and others where small groups can have homemade items for sale, which is very good for a place like Africa where you make special rugs and stuff like that. And you just get the picture up there and you get paid through PayPal or other platforms. So platforms are business models that allow you to do stuff that you can do on your own, and this is going to be very large in Africa because you've got so many people. And of course, everybody knows Facebook and communication and messages. Now, as far as connectivity goes, you've got to have Wi-Fi, and it's better if you have free Wi-Fi. Everything that's free is usually good. So free Wi-Fi, and the country that's leading this, like Dr. Trey mentioned, is South Africa. They have actually said it's almost a rite of passage to have free Wi-Fi. It doesn't cost a lot. I mean, it's cheaper than, well, it's not cheaper than water, because water is very expensive, but it's very, very cheap. But what's needed is equipment for Africa. And like was mentioned earlier, if it works in Africa, it's going to work any place. So what has happened, there's a young lady who lived in Chicago. She invented the brick, B-R-C-K. She's from Kenya. She's now doing very well. She put together a bunch of guys from the US and Africa and Europe. And they invented the brick. There's the brick, 5 inches. Looks like some of these German food cakes you buy. It's available online for $240. And what it is, it can run on any cellular network. It's rugged, you can drop it, you can drive your line rover over it and keep going. You just plug it in with your SIM card from your cell phone, set it up, and you can have any number of people connected to it as long as you don't overshoot the bandwidth capability. You may have 30 or 40 people running if they're not doing a lot of heavy stuff like mathematical computations. So this is what is needed, and that's what I call doing something in Africa that you can do for Africa. Now, we spoke about all this technology and all this good stuff. Now, you can't get all the technology and not be able to use it. So here comes the kicker. You gotta have a skill. And if you don't have a skill, you might not even go to the game. You know, guys like Ronaldo, who played football for Barcelona, he spent 14 years being the best striker in the world. That's why he makes $450 million. So you gotta have a skill. It's a personal ability derived from your knowledge, training, and aptitude to do something really well. And skills are technical, non-technical. There's one I always throw in there, it's called ethical. You've got to do good or go home. Now let's look at Nigeria as an example. Not all the skills are available in Nigeria, but what's available is the rest of the world. So as a local individual that's trying to put together a team that requires a lot of prerequisite skills, you say, well, let me look around and see if I can find some guys in the US or Australia or Europe, and put the team together. And to apply these skills, you have to have some systematic way of doing it. You've got to be creative, critical, and you've got to communicate. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of some of these specific areas as we go through. But you've got to be able to apply these skills. You've got to collaborate with the people. And of course, you've got to have good management. If there's no good management, you have a white elephant. It's dead in the water. Team has no physical boundaries, which is very good because not only physical, but there are no time boundaries. A team can work 24/7 because when Dr. Jimmy and his group are sleeping here in Houston, Mrs. Tony over there in West Africa is just getting it. So the project goes 24/7. This is an example of an actual project we did here. We had 15 different companies working to develop a device for electric meters, the smart grid. The actual hardware was done in California and India. The software was done in the US and Europe and India. The drawings were done in Colombia, in Bolivia. So, you know, you put a team like that together, that works. Well, let me give you some ideas very quickly of what I call creative collaboration. I call it the dog experiment. I say, well, Kenny, what's a dog experiment? It's an experiment that involves a dog. The other one is the vacuum cleaner. So that's rather rudimentary. It is, but there's a kicker. The dog experiment was done in 1971 when I was a grad student. Here's what it was. We had to develop a standalone system for an intensive care unit at a hospital. They said, it's got to be fully automatic, standalone, and not kill anybody. You have to monitor the patients, save lives, save money, increase efficiency, and have better healthcare delivery. This is what it was. A dog on a table in a clinic. A computer. I know that nobody here recognizes that because nobody here is that old. That's an IBM 1130. Very old machine. And here are the drug control systems, which were all connected, and a computer model was used to determine how the dog behaves and how the drug should behave, maintain a safe blood pressure and a heartbeat ratio. It took us 14 hours to get to the point where we knew exactly what the dog would be doing. We would put the dog out on the table and bring it back alive. We didn't kill it, we just knocked it out. Bring it back alive with phenobarbital. And then we will see how the dog would respond to different levels. And by this week at 8 o'clock tonight, and by 4 the next morning, we had a dog model built in the computer. We did this about 15 times, at the end of which we had a system that is this and that. The intensive care unit, nobody's dying unless the clinicians don't show up. So that's it. Now here's the other one. This is thinking outside the box. And this is critical because what I notice in my travels around the world is that some people get regimented in the way they want to think, and they think like the guy next door, or the gal next door, or they think like the boss wants them to think. If the boss is thinking one way and you don't like it, find a new boss. That's what you gotta do. This guy was vacuuming the house, a very nice guy. His wife can do, so he did. His vacuum cleaner kept climbing and said, "What's going on here?" He said, "We need something to go back." Now, back in 1880, almost to the date, a patent was filed in the oil and gas industry for something called a centrifuge. It didn't look like that back in 1880, but that's the way it looks like today. It uses what we call a centrifuge. Now, this particular gentleman, he's not an engineer, he's not a designer, he's just an artist, but his brain functions outside the box. His name is James Dyson. You probably see him advertising on television. He's got white hair now, and he's very cool because he's worth $5 billion. He's worth his company's probably worth 15 or 20 billion. No petroleum engineer, I'm a petroleum engineer. Would ever happen to a vacuum cleaner as a new device. But Mr. Dyson did. Thinking outside the box, he said, wait a minute. These guys are separating little particles from water and stuff, which is a fluid. Why can't I separate little particles of dust from the air in the vacuum cleaner? So he spent a couple of years, next thing you know, we had it. So this is what I say we have to look at in Africa. Technology is there. You can't use technology, there's too much of it, it's too expensive, and you want to get away from having white elephants. A white elephant is simply a political event that does not turn out correctly. Somebody wants to bring something big and fancy, they bring in the politicians bring in the TV cameras, YouTube videos are made, and it goes up on the internet. It looks good for a week. But technology is not appropriate. A hospital in the middle of one of the small cities does not need an MRI system. They don't have the electric power, they don't have the electronics control to condition the quality of electric power, so it doesn't have these, what we call variations and transients. You don't have the local guys who can fix it, and if something on the plug breaks, you can't go to Home Depot and pick one up. So white elephants are abundant, like Terry mentioned, so you have to use technology within the confines of local needs and expectations. And this is one of the problems. You don't have the local critical mass to do it, or technology, or management. You have to fly in somebody from the US or the UK, you got to FedEx something in, and it's going to take time and money. Then you have to pay somebody to get it to the customers. So it's very difficult. So technology has problems, and I'm pretty sure that some of the different speakers will cover some of this, but you have power supply, water problems, spare parts, and trained personnel. Maintenance is something that has to be done. You don't just build it and forget it. You have to build it and maintain it. If you don't, it crashes. That's why we have the NTSB and the FAA. The planes are maintained every 100 hours, come hell or high water. pilots fly 70 hours and they come here with high water. So you're in the middle of a snowstorm someplace, the guy lands the plane late, and he says, I got 69.5 hours, I'm going home. Take him off. You can't fly 71 hours. So maintenance and this stuff is required. Now let's move on to something in a different venue. One of the technologies that's coming in is called 3D printing. Now 3D printers used to be only available in very large companies, very expensive, but what it is, you can make anything, and I mean anything, from a computer drawing, anywhere in the world, by anyone, then sell it to anyone. They actually make a 3D material, which are actually making people's ears to reattach. They're making heart valves to put inside hearts. They're making jewelry by the thousands, shipping from China and India and other places. They're actually making stuff that you physically can't make because you have to go inside and cut it backwards. So what 3D printing does, it takes a computer file, cuts it into little pieces, and then drops them on like icing on a cake, backwards. So this stuff is becoming very popular. And you can imagine some little group of women in a village that were making either local jewelry or something. They can make this stuff with local materials because you can use anything in here that you can actually sort of granulate or make like a powder. So it's a very nice area to get into. Now I talked about low-tech stuff. Low-tech is what people call not very sexy. But the thing about low-tech is that you can't do it, especially in places where you don't have access to everything that's big and expensive. In livestock and plants, you can increase the species more effectively, get greater yields, and have a lot more fun. Now this is my favorite low-tech. This young lady invested $65 in an irrigation system, a drip irrigation, that puts the water exactly at the root of the product. In this case, lettuce. There's no wash off, no loss of fertilizer, and she uses less than 25% of the regular water. This has a pump, a reservoir, and a bunch of PVC pipe. It's sustainable, it's not rocket science, it's just what anyone can do. So the annual revenue was $1,000 US. That's a lot of money for this young lady. And look at the quality of the product. Now, one thing I want to add as we get to the end of this is none of this works. Oh, that's my next your lifesaver. You're almost there, guys. Is what I call the entrepreneur spirit. Without this, it's going to take a long time to get it done. That's going to take a lot of effort that may be wasted. You've got to have a high degree of intellectual capacity and curiosity. I've been to places where you sit in a group like this and you speak to the people, and you can see that their eyes don't light up. You say to yourself, now what are they thinking? Or why am I here? That problem, I haven't seen it much in Africa. I've seen it in the Middle East and other countries. So I will give Africa aid for intellectual capacity and curiosity. You got to have a personal drive, and you're going to be willing to fail many, many times. Now, all of this is trying to get technology used in the marketplace or inside the organization. You can do it the easy way, or you do it the hard way. To me, the easy way is to start your own company. Get out there, find the platforms online that allow you to do what you want to do. There are a lot of them. We have used Elance, we've used Fiverr. Fiverr, how many people know what Fiverr is? Okay, it's unbelievable. It's a place where for $5 you get a lot of stuff done. Yeah. $5, I'm not kidding you. You can get press release written for $5. I had some old family pictures I got updated by a guy in India for $5. It's called Fiverr. Now, you want to look around the world and see what other people are doing. India, China, Europe. Look at these professionals, they have a lot of history doing it, especially the guys in Eastern Europe and India. The Chinese guys, there's a problem. The problem is communication. When you work with the Chinese, you have to write short sentences and a lot of sentences because the English capacity is not very good. So you've got to be very, shall we say, persnickety about it. Look at what these people are doing. Emulate it and modify it. You will see with very little input on your end, you'll be doing stuff that is going to be competitive with the rest of the world. Now, a lot of services out there, everything from computer programming, design, back office operations, sales and marketing, finance. Let me give you a story. I've written a lot of patents. There's a company in the US that charges, $10, $15, $20,000 for a patent. There's a group in India, a bunch of lawyers, they're patent attorneys. They are doing work for this company, and they charge them like $2,000 to do the patent work. The US company is now charging $18,000. Their profit in the US is $16,000. So I asked the guy in India, how do you get the job? He said, I'm running late. He said, I sent this company a critique of the patents they filed showing the mistakes they made. This is the Indian guy sent it to the US company and said, hey, you screwed up here and here and here and here. The US guy said, can we hire you? He said, sure. So that's what happened. So let me finish this right now because Sean is going to issue. Ethics. Ethics are there for a reason. Regulations are there for a reason. And it makes the playing field level. Sometimes you have companies that are bending the rules, everybody heard about Volkswagen. And sometimes you have individuals who are bending the rules. And corruption is a problem. There's one company paid $1.4 billion in bribes in 6 years prior to the year 2008. They bribed 4,300 times. We will actually compete against this company at one time. I didn't actually say it. This is how Africa and the world looks at night in a composite picture. This is how it can look if we get the future going in the right way. I think I went a little bit late, but